In our top story on World DNA, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is seeking to shore up support from his allies after a shock rebel offensive saw his forces lose control of Aleppo.
Syrian and Russian airstrikes pummeled areas of northern Syria as Iran's top diplomat visited Damascus in a show of support for the regime.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi landed in Turkey hours after holding top-level talks in Damascus. And according to Turkish media, Araghchi was expected to meet with Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan on Monday before talks with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Syrian regime has accused Erdogan of supporting and funding rebel efforts to topple Assad.
Russia, which is another Assad ally, was helping the Syrian army repel the rebel forces. Russian military has said that missile and bombing strikes were carried out, adding that at least 320 militants were destroyed.
Moscow has announced earlier this week that it was bombing rebel targets. And according to the Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, Russian warplanes have struck parts of Aleppo for the first time since 2016. Russian and Syrian jets also bombed the northwestern city of Idlib. Reports say, citing military sources.
Syrian Army Chief General Abdel Karam Mahmoud Ibrahim conducting a field tour in northern Hama countryside. The visit comes while the Syrian military rushed reinforcements to the country's northwest. According to a Syrian war monitor, the government troops have created a strong defensive line in northern Hama as they attempt to stall the insurgents' momentum after they have gained control of Aleppo.
The rebels' offensive by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham was launched on Wednesday with two-pronged attack in Aleppo and the countryside around Idlib before moving towards neighboring Hama province.
Well, for more on this, we're now being joined by Colonel David Biderosh from Washington, D.C. He is a professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies and former Deputy Director for Peacekeeping in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Welcome to World DNA, Colonel Biderosh.
Thank you.
Now, Colonel Biderosh, while the Syrian rebels are moving towards Hama of taking control of Aleppo, we are seeing some diplomatic maneuvering taking place with the Iranian foreign minister in Turkey as of now. Your assessment of the situation, and do you think that the diplomatic maneuvering and the talks can perhaps de-escalate tensions in Syria at this point of time?
No, I don't think so. I mean, what you have fighting the Syrian regime is pretty much a group of forces that have different objectives. So Iran's concern, Iran is the primary backer and patron of Bashar al-Assad. They also provided the bulk of the forces who actually did the ground fighting in the Syrian civil war, to include militias recruited in Pakistan, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Their main concern is seeing that Turkey doesn't contribute to overthrowing Bashar al-Assad. The militias that Bashar al-Assad is opposing are primarily, though, independent Syrian militias. The Turkish-sponsored militias are more likely to aim towards the Syrian Democratic Forces, the U.S.-supported Kurdish-led regime that's in the northeast of Syria. Turkey doesn't want to see them achieve a greater degree of control because they fear that the Kurdish issue will bleed over into Turkey. So there's a lot of people with a lot of motives, and I don't think that one ministerial visit is going to solve it.
Right. And just adding to your point, because you have mentioned all these countries that are taking part in this conflict. Now, what does it mean for Russia, Iran, and Turkey, and how important this conflict is for them? Could you just explain it to us? And how do you see this panning out, as well as for Assad?
Yeah. So let's start with Russia. So right now, the rebels are moving down to Hama. If they take Hama and the countryside to the west of it, that will isolate Damascus from the Russian naval base in Tartus, as well as the Russian air base, which is outside of Latakia on the Mediterranean Sea. So Russia stands quite a bit to lose. Most of their senior leaders have fought in Syria, some multiple times, and it would just be a humiliating climb down for them. So they are vested in keeping Bashar al-Assad in power, and indeed the word is that Bashar either was in or remains in Moscow. Iran wants to see their client state in place, primarily to secure a land bridge between Lebanese Hezbollah, which of course is on the ropes, has basically ceased to function as an effective military organization, and their proxies in Iraq. They need a land bridge from Tehran to Beirut, basically. If Bashar al-Assad falls, that will be disrupted. So, and they also invested a lot of money and a lot of lives. Some of the lives were Iranian and most of them were others in their proxies to keep Bashar in power. They don't want to see that wiped out. Turkey's primary concern is they do not want to have a Kurdish independent organization on their borders because they see that as inevitably aligned with the Kurdish movements in Turkey, which they've fought for a generation or so.
Right, Colonel Roche, while you've outlined the implications and the motivations of all the countries involved in the Syrian war there, Syrian and Russian jets are stepping up strikes after the takeover of Aleppo by the insurgents. And while you've also mentioned the Syrian rebels are moving towards Hama, your assessment, do you think that this is the next big war in the region after what we've seen happening in Gaza and Lebanon?
Well, it has the potential to draw in multiple countries. So the Iraqi Hashd-e-Shabi militia, which are paid by the Iraqi government but answer to Iran, they have said that they are going to move into Damascus, and the Iranian media reports that some of these Iraqi units have arrived in Damascus to take part in conflict, take part in action there. At the same time, there's also reports that the U.S. forces, which are in the extreme east of the country, have launched attacks against the various Iranian proxy militias in Syria in order to prevent them from attacking U.S. forces in what they see as a moment of distraction. So there is a possibility they can draw in other countries. But I think that what really should be of concern to Russia and Iran is the fact that Syria's army, has been in conflict for 13 years and is still incredibly weak. And a big part of that is because most of the Syrian army has not focused on fighting. They're the world's largest producer of the drug Captagon. Bashar al-Assad's brother actually directs that. And they just have gotten so involved in making money that they've stopped taking care of security business. And it is uncertain if Iran is going to be able to move enough forces in there if they want to preserve this regime. But on the other hand, after the defeat of Lebanese Hezbollah and Hamas, I think Iran cannot afford to lose another proxy.
Right, Colonel Roche, absolutely, especially with Syrian regime's allies embroiled in other conflicts in West Asia. But thank you so much for joining us on World DNA with your insights.
Thank you.